The phone rang 3 times
What
before he
happened
answered.
to my
A
son?
Korean businessman sat in the back of his black sedan, watching the city lights blur past his tinted windows. His driver knew better than to speak during these late-night drives. The silence was a language they both understood. "Sir." The voice on the other end was shaking. Not the controlled tone of his head of security, but something raw, something afraid. He straightened in his seat. "Speak." "There's been an incident at the house. Men tried to break into the property. They got past the first gate before security stopped them." His jaw tightened. "My son." The pause that followed lasted 3 seconds. 3 seconds that felt like falling through ice. "Sir, the boy is safe, but the woman, the new maid, she... What about her? She was injured protecting your son. She pushed him out of harm's way when the intruders broke through the garden door first Nenny. She's being taken to Seoul Central Hospital now." The phone slipped slightly in his grip. The city lights stopped blurring. Everything stopped. "Which hospital?" "Seoul Central. They're taking her to the emergency room now." "Sir," they're saying. He ended the call. "Seoul Central, now." The driver didn't ask questions. The car accelerated into the night. 48 hours earlier, none of this had seemed possible. 48 hours earlier, she was just another employee, another face in a house full of staff who kept their heads down and their mouths shut. Nobody special. Nobody who mattered. She had arrived on a Tuesday morning, carrying one small suitcase and wearing clothes that had seen better days. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Choi, had looked her up and down with barely concealed disapproval. "You're the one from the agency?" Mrs. Choi's tone suggested she'd been expecting someone different, someone who fit a specific mold. "Yes, ma'am. I was told you needed help with general housekeeping. We need someone who can follow instructions without questions. This isn't a normal household. Do you understand?" She understood more than Mrs. Choi realized. She understood that this house sat behind gates that regular people didn't pass through. She understood that the men in dark suits were security personnel. She understood that questions led to very short employment, and sometimes worse. "I understand, ma'am." Mrs. Choi handed her a uniform, still wrapped in plastic. "Your quarters are in the East Wing, 3rd floor. You start at 6 tomorrow morning. Don't wander. Don't speak unless spoken to. And stay away from the upper floors unless specifically instructed." "May I ask why?" Mrs. Choi's expression hardened. "That's exactly the kind of question you shouldn't ask." The other staff members were polite but distant. During dinner in the staff kitchen that first evening, conversations died when she entered. She ate quickly, alone at the end of a long table, and noticed how the others watched her when they thought she wasn't looking. A young man, maybe 25, finally broke the silence. "You should be careful here." An older woman elbowed him sharply. "Don't start. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. The last 3 people who worked here left suddenly. Enough." The older woman's voice cut through the room. She turned to the new maid. "Ignore him. He talks too much." But the young man leaned forward anyway, his voice dropping to a whisper. "They just left. One day they were here, the next day their rooms were empty. Nobody talks about it. Nobody asks why." The new maid met his eyes. "Thank you for the warning." She meant it. Information was survival, always had been. That night, lying in her small room with its single window overlooking the garden, she couldn't sleep. Not because of the warnings, though they sat heavy in her stomach, but because of something else. Something she'd seen while Mrs. Choi was showing her around the ground floor. A boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, standing in the doorway of what looked like a library, perfectly still, watching them pass. His eyes had followed her with an intensity that didn't match his age. And when Mrs. Choi noticed him there, she'd hurried past without acknowledgement, as if he were invisible. The boy hadn't made a sound. The next morning started before dawn. Mrs. Choi had a list of tasks that seemed designed to test endurance more than skill. Polish the floors in the main hall, dust every surface in the formal dining room, clean the windows in the conservatory. Each task was inspected with critical eyes, and each time Mrs. Choi found something to correct. "You missed a spot here. This silver isn't bright enough. These curtains still have wrinkles." She redid everything without complaint. Survival meant swallowing pride. It was during her 3rd trip through the main hall that she saw the boy again. He was sitting on the grand staircase watching her work. This time, she was close enough to see his face clearly. Beautiful features, serious eyes, and something else. Something in the way he held himself, perfectly still, perfectly silent. She smiled at him. A small, genuine smile. Nothing more. He didn't smile back, but his eyes widened slightly and his head tilted to the side as if she'd done something unexpected. Mrs. Choi's voice cut through the moment. I told you not to bother the young master. I wasn't bothering him, ma'am. I was just... The young master doesn't interact with staff. Continue your work. But as she returned to polishing the floors, she felt the boy's eyes still on her. And she understood something that Mrs. Choi's warnings hadn't prepared her for. The boy was deaf. She recognized it immediately. The way he watched mouths when people spoke near him. The way he stood perfectly still, relying on other senses. The way everyone avoided looking directly at him, as if his silence made them uncomfortable. She'd known another child like him once. A long time ago. A lifetime ago. That afternoon, while cleaning one of the sitting rooms, she encountered him again. This time, he wasn't just watching. He was standing directly in her path, blocking her way to the next room. She stopped, waited, gave him space to move if he wanted to. He didn't move. Instead, he pointed at her, then at the floor, then at himself. A question without words. She understood. Slowly, carefully, she set down her cleaning supplies. Then, with hands that remembered movements they hadn't made in years, she signed a single word. Friend. The reaction was immediate. The boy's eyes went wide. His mouth opened slightly. His hands came up, fingers forming shapes that she recognized, words that tumbled out faster than she could fully follow. You know, you understand? Nobody here understands. Nobody talks to me. Nobody. She held up one hand, gently, and signed back. Slow down. Yes, I understand. Yes, I can talk with you. He stopped. His whole body seemed to vibrate with contained energy. Then he signed, very carefully, very deliberately. What's your name? She fingerspelled it for him, letter by letter. He repeated it back, his small hands forming each letter with precision. Then he signed, I'm Ji-hoon. Do you have to leave now? Her heart softened at the hope in his face. The desperate hope that this connection, this unexpected bridge between his silent world and the speaking world around him wouldn't disappear. I have work to finish, but I'm not leaving. I work here now. His smile, when it came, transformed his entire face. It was the smile of a child who'd been waiting a very long time for someone to see him. Mrs. Choi says I'm not supposed to bother the staff. She says I make people uncomfortable. You don't make me uncomfortable. Why not? She paused, choosing her signs carefully. Because I once knew someone like you. Someone who taught me that silence doesn't mean empty. Sometimes silence is full of words that others can't hear. He studied her face for a long moment, then signed. Who was it? The person you knew. The question hit harder than she'd expected. Someone I lost. Someone I wish I could have helped more. Before he could ask more, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Heavy footsteps. The kind that made the boy's expression change immediately from open curiosity to guarded neutrality. A man appeared in the doorway. Tall, sharp-suited, with eyes that scanned the room with careful attention. His gaze landed on the boy first, then shifted to her, still kneeling on the floor with her hands frozen mid-sign. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. What's happening here? His voice was quiet, carefully controlled. She stood immediately, bowing her head. I was just cleaning, sir. The young master was what? He stepped into the room. Bothering you? No, sir, not at all. His eyes narrowed. He looked at his son, then back at her, and something shifted in his expression. Confusion, maybe, or suspicion. You were using your hands. Why? She kept her voice steady. I was just communicating with the young master, sir. He seemed to want to ask something. Communicating. He repeated the word as if testing it for traps. You know sign language? Yes, sir. How? The question hung in the air between them. How did a housemaid from an agency know sign language? How did she happen to be the first person in this house who could speak to a child everyone else had written off as difficult to reach? She met his eyes directly. A calculated risk. I learned it a long time ago, sir, for personal reasons. He studied her for what felt like an eternity. She could feel him weighing her answer, measuring her words against whatever calculations ran through his mind. This was a man who built success on reading people, on knowing when they were lying, on sensing problems before they materialized. Finally, he spoke. My son doesn't need distractions. Yes, sir. She kept her voice neutral, professional, but inside something cracked at the coldness in his tone. My son doesn't need distractions, as if connection was a distraction, as if his child's desperate loneliness was something to be managed rather than healed. The man turned to leave, then stopped. Without looking back, he said, If he seeks you out again, you may respond, but your work comes first. It wasn't permission. It was a test. She understood that immediately. Yes, sir. He left without another word. But Jihoon was still standing there, and when their eyes met, the boy signed something that made her chest tighten. That's my father. He's afraid of me. No, Jihoon. He's not afraid of you. Then why won't he look at me? Why won't he learn to talk to me? She had no answer that wouldn't hurt him more. So instead, she signed, sometimes grown-ups forget how to connect. They get so busy protecting people that they forget how to love them. He considered this, his young face far too serious. Then he signed, will you teach him to talk like this? I don't think your father wants to learn from someone like me. Why? Because you're staff? Because I'm not from here. Because I look different. Because I'm nobody important. Jihoon's hands moved with sudden fierceness. You're important to me. The simple declaration carried more weight than any speech. This child, isolated in his own home, surrounded by people who treated his disability like an embarrassment, had just claimed her as someone who mattered. She signed back carefully, then I'll be here for you. I promise. It was a promise she would keep, even when it cost everything. Over the next 2 days, a pattern emerged. Jihoon would find her during her work, and they would communicate in stolen moments. A conversation while she cleaned windows, a story shared while she polished silver. He was starving for connection, and she found herself drawn deeper into his world with each exchange. But others noticed. Mrs. Choi's disapproval grew more obvious. The young master has become attached to you. This is not appropriate. I'm just responding when he communicates with me, ma'am. His father gave permission. The master gives permission for many things he doesn't truly mean. Be careful. Getting too close to that child is dangerous. The warning should have been clear enough. But that afternoon, while working in the hallway outside Jihoon's room, she overheard something that changed everything. 2 men in suits, speaking in low voices. Security personnel, based on their bearing and the weapons barely concealed under their jackets. The weakness is obvious. Anyone who wants to hurt him goes through the kid. The boss knows. That's why the boy barely leaves his room, like a prisoner in his own house. Still a vulnerability. If I were planning something, that's where I'd strike. They moved on, unaware she'd heard every word, but the meaning was crystal clear. Jihoon wasn't just isolated because of his father's coldness. He was isolated because his existence made his father vulnerable. And in a world where power was everything, vulnerability was death. That night, she couldn't sleep. The small room that had felt like refuge now felt like a cage. She kept seeing Jihoon's face, kept remembering his signs. You're important to me. Around 2 a.m, she heard something. A soft sound in the hallway outside her door. Not the heavy footsteps of security. Something lighter, more hesitant. She opened her door carefully. Jihoon stood there in his pajamas, tears streaming down his face. His hands moved frantically, signs tumbling over each other. Bad dream. Scared. Father not home. Nobody hears when I'm scared. Nobody comes. She pulled him into her room without thinking, closing the door behind them. I hear you. I'm here. You're safe. He collapsed against her, and she held him while he cried. Silent tears that shook his small body. All the loneliness, all the fear, all the confusion of being a child who couldn't make the world understand his pain. When he finally calmed, she signed, Do you have nightmares often? Every night. Men with guns. Breaking things. Hurting father. Taking me away. Her blood ran cold. Jihoon, have people tried to hurt you before? His nod was small, reluctant. Once. 2 years ago. Men came to the house. Father fought them. Lots of blood. I couldn't hear the fighting, but I saw everything through the doorway. Father told me to hide and I hid, but I saw. I always see. She understood then. The isolation wasn't just strategy. It was trauma. The boy had witnessed violence that no child should see, and his father's response was to lock him away, as if removing him from sight would remove him from danger. Jihoon, listen to me. Nothing is going to happen to you. I won't let it. You can't promise that. You're just... He stopped himself, but she knew what he was going to say. You're just a maid. Just staff. Just someone who cleans floors and stays invisible. She signed with absolute conviction, I can promise that. And I do. If anyone tries to hurt you, they'll have to go through me first. He searched her face, looking for the lie, looking for the moment when adults said comforting things they didn't mean. But whatever he saw there made him believe. His arms wrapped around her neck, and he signed against her shoulder. Don't leave me. Please don't leave me like everyone else. I'm not going anywhere. She walked him back to his room, stayed until he fell asleep, then returned to her own quarters. But sleep didn't come, because she'd just made a promise that might be impossible to keep. And because somewhere in this house, in the dark hours when predators made their plans, people were seeing Ji-hoon as a target. The next day, the house felt different. Or maybe she was just seeing it clearly for the first time. The way security personnel positioned themselves at key points. The way certain staff members moved through the halls with unusual tension. The way Mrs. That, Choi's eyes followed her more than necessary. Something was coming. She could feel it in her bones. That afternoon, while cleaning one of the upstairs sitting rooms, she found herself in an unexpected conversation. A woman, mid-40s, elegant in a way that spoke of money and education, was arranging flowers in a crystal vase. The master's sister, based on the family resemblance and the way staff treated her with deference. "So you're the one who can talk to my nephew." The woman didn't look up from her flowers. "Yes, ma'am. It's been good for him. I've noticed the change. He smiles now. He didn't used to smile." The observation caught her off guard. "He's a wonderful child, ma'am." "Yes, he is, which is why he's in such danger." Now the woman looked up and her eyes were sharp, knowing. "You're aware, I assume, of the threats that come with this family." "I've heard things, ma'am. My brother has made enemies, powerful enemies. Some of them would hurt Ji-hoon just to prove they could, just to show that even the strongest man has weak points." She placed another flower with precise care. "Tell me something. If it came down to it, would you protect that boy?" The question was a test. Everything in this house was a test. "Yes, ma'am, I would." "Even if it meant putting yourself in danger?" "Yes." The woman studied her for a long moment. "I believe you, which is either very brave or very foolish. I haven't decided which yet. May I ask you something, ma'am?" A slight nod. "Why doesn't the master learn to communicate with his son? Why leave the boy so isolated?" The woman's expression shifted. Something like pain crossed her face. "Because my brother is terrified, not of enemies, not of violence, of connection. He loved once, loved completely, and it destroyed him when he lost her. Ji-hoon's mother. She died giving birth to that beautiful child, and my brother has never forgiven himself, or Ji-hoon." The revelation hit like a physical blow. He blames his own son, not consciously, but every time he looks at Ji-hoon, he sees her, sees what he lost, and the boy's deafness, he takes it as proof that he's cursed, that everything he loves becomes broken. That's not fair to Ji-hoon. No, it's not, but fair has never been a word associated with this family. The woman finished her arrangement and moved toward the door. Before leaving, she said, "Be careful. People who get close to that boy either leave or disappear. I'd prefer you didn't do either." The warning echoed Mrs. Choi's words, but now she understood the stakes more clearly. This wasn't just about employment or household politics. This was about a child caught in the crossfire between his father's fear and his father's enemies. That evening, Ji-hoon appeared in the kitchen while she was helping prepare dinner. The cook frowned but said nothing as the boy tugged on her sleeve. "Can we talk? Outside?" They walked to the garden, where late summer flowers bloomed in careful rows. In the fading light, his signs took on an urgency she hadn't seen before. "Something's wrong. The security people keep looking at me strange, and father had men in his office today. Angry men." "How do you know they were angry?" "I can feel it. The way they move, the way they slam doors. I can't hear, but I feel everything else twice as much, and everyone's afraid." She knelt down to his level. "Ji-hoon, I need you to promise me something. If anything happens, if anything feels wrong, you come find me immediately. Doesn't matter what I'm doing, you find me." "Why? What's going to happen?" "Nothing. I'm just being careful." But he wasn't fooled. His eyes, wise beyond their years, saw through the comfort. "Quick question. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your country or city in the comments, hit the like button, and subscribe if you're enjoying this story so far." "You're scared too," he signed. "I can see it." She couldn't lie to him, not when he read the world through observation, through the tiny details others missed. "Yes, I'm scared, but not for me, for you. Because of what those men said about me being the weakness?" Her heart stopped. "You heard that conversation?" "I read their lips. I'm good at it. I have to be." His small hands trembled as he signed. "They said someone might try to take me, to hurt father by hurting me." She pulled him close, her mind racing. He'd been carrying this fear alone, processing threats that would terrify an adult with no one to talk to about it, until now. "Listen to me very carefully. Your father has protected you for years. His whole life is built around keeping you safe. And now you have me too. Nothing is going to happen. But what if? No what ifs. We stay alert. We stay together when possible. And we trust that the people here know what they're doing. Even as she signed it, she wondered if that trust was misplaced, because the uncomfortable truth was settling into her bones like winter cold. Security could be breached, guards could be bought, and a child, even in a fortress, was never truly safe when powerful people wanted to send a message. They returned to the house as darkness fell completely. But Jihoon held her hand the entire way, something he'd never done before. The gesture spoke louder than any signs. He was terrified, and she was the only anchor he had. That night, she didn't sleep at all. She sat by her window, watching the garden below, watching shadows move across the grounds. Security patrols, probably. Normal activity. But everything felt wrong. The air itself seemed to be holding its breath. At midnight, her door opened without warning. She spun around, heart hammering, to find the master standing in her doorway. He looked exhausted, his expensive suit rumpled, his eyes carrying a weight she hadn't seen before. "Sir, He held up one hand. "My son came to my office tonight. First time in 6 months he's sought me out voluntarily. Do you know what he did?" She shook her head, afraid to speak. "He wrote me a note, in English, because he knows I can read that, but I can't understand his hands." The man's voice cracked slightly. He wrote, "Please don't send her away. She's the only one who talks to me. I'll be good. I promise I'll be good. Just let her stay." The words hit her like a punch. Jihoon thought his father was going to fire her, thought he was going to lose another connection, another person who made his world less lonely. "Sir, I would never do anything to." "I know." He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. Up close, she could see the lines of stress etched into his face. "I know because I've been watching. Because in this house, everyone is watched. And what I've seen is my son smiling for the first time in years, laughing, acting like a child instead of a ghost." He moved to the window, staring out at the same view she'd been monitoring. "His aunt told me about your conversation, about what you said regarding fairness. I apologize if I overstepped. You spoke truth. I've been hiding from my son because looking at him hurts, because he reminds me of everything I've lost, and in doing so, I've made him lose too. Lose childhood. Lose joy, lose any sense of being wanted." The vulnerability in his voice was startling. This man, who commanded fear and respect in equal measure, was breaking open in front of a maid he barely knew. "Your son is brilliant, sir. Kind, brave. He just needs someone to see him. And you see him. Yes." He turned to face her fully. "There are threats, real threats, against this family, against him specifically. My enemies know that hurting him is the fastest way to destroy me, and they're right. If anything happened to that boy." He stopped, unable to finish the sentence. She waited, letting him gather himself. "I need to ask you something, and I need absolute honesty. Can you provide that?" "Yes, sir." "If a situation arose where my son was in danger, would you protect him? Would you put his safety above your own?" The question hung between them like a blade. This wasn't theoretical anymore. This was a father preparing for a worst-case scenario, trying to ensure his child had every possible layer of protection. She met his eyes directly. "Without hesitation, sir. Without question. Even though you owe this family nothing, I made him a promise. I don't break promises to children." Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition of a kindred spirit who understood the weight of protection. "There's a situation developing. Business matters that could become volatile. For the next few days, I need you to stay close to Jihoon, not as a maid, as his companion, his guardian when I cannot be." "Sir, surely trained security would be more appropriate. Security can be compromised, money talks, and my enemies have plenty of it. But you," he paused, choosing words carefully, "you he trusts, and trust is worth more than training in situations like this." She understood what he wasn't saying. If someone inside the house was bought, if the threat came from within, Jihoon needed someone whose loyalty wasn't for sale. Someone who protected him because they cared, not because they were paid. "I'll keep him safe, sir. I promise you that." He nodded once, then moved toward the door. Before leaving, he said something that made her breath catch. "My sister told me about your past, about the child you lost. I'm sorry, and I'm grateful that loss made you capable of loving mine." Then he was gone, leaving her alone with the crushing responsibility of what she'd just agreed to. The next morning started with false normalcy. breakfast, cleaning schedules, Mrs. Choi's assignments. But underneath the routine, tension crackled like electricity before a storm. Jihoon found her in the library, where she was supposed to be dusting shelves, but was actually memorizing exit routes and potential defensive positions. Father said you're going to stay with me today. Like a bodyguard, she signed back with a smile. Like a friend who happens to be very protective. What's happening? Why is everyone acting strange? Your father has important business. He just wants to be extra careful. You're lying. You're bad at lying. Your face does this thing. He scrunched up his features in exaggerated concern, mocking her expression. Despite everything, she laughed. Okay, you caught me. Yes, there's some tension, but that's exactly why I'm here, to make sure nothing interrupts your day. Can we at least do something fun? If the world might end, I want to enjoy it first. His dark humor surprised her. But children who lived with constant threat developed coping mechanisms that seemed inappropriate to outsiders. Gallows humor was survival. What did you have in mind? Teach me something. Not school stuff. Something real. Something about you. They spent the morning in his room, which was larger than her entire childhood home had been. She taught him about her hometown, about the place she'd come from, about the life she'd lived before this mansion, and its dangerous luxuries. He was fascinated by stories of normalcy, of neighborhoods where children played in streets without security details, of schools where kids argued and laughed and existed without fear. Do you miss it? He signed. That life? Sometimes. But I'm here now, and here's where I'm needed. Why do you care so much? About me, I mean. You could just do your job and leave me alone like everyone else. The question deserved honesty, because once, a long time ago, I knew a child who needed someone to see him, to really see him, not just look past him. And I was young and didn't understand how to help. By the time I learned, it was too late. He was gone. What happened to him? He got sick, the kind of sick that medicine couldn't fix. And he died alone because the people who should have loved him were too busy or too scared or too selfish to sit with him at the end. Jihoon's eyes filled with tears. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. It is, which is why I promised myself that if I ever had another chance to be there for a child who needed someone, I wouldn't fail again. He threw his arms around her neck. I'm glad you failed before, because it brought you here. To me. Is that selfish? No, sweetheart. That's human. They were still hugging when the first sound of breaking glass echoed from somewhere below. She pulled back instantly, every nerve suddenly alert. Jihoon's eyes widened in question, unable to hear what she'd heard. She signed rapidly. Stay behind me. Don't make a sound. Something's wrong. More sounds. Shouting. The sharp crack that might have been gunfire or might have been doors slamming. From Jihoon's room on the second floor, it was impossible to tell. She moved to the door, locked it, then pushed a heavy dresser against it. Not enough to stop determined intruders, but enough to slow them down. By precious seconds. Jihoon's hands shook as he signed. Is it happening? What I dreamed about? I don't know yet, but we're going to be smart. We're going to stay calm. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Get the boy to the safe room. East wing, behind the painting, code 1992, now. It had to be from the master, or his sister, or security. But in the chaos, who could she trust? Another crash, closer this time, definitely on the second floor now. Jihoon grabbed her arm, his face pale with terror. She pulled him close, thinking rapidly. The safe room was 3 hallways away. They'd be exposed, vulnerable. But staying here meant being trapped. The decision made itself. She grabbed his hand. We're going to move fast. Stay with me. Don't let go. She pulled the dresser away, opened the door carefully, and peered into the hallway. Empty. But the sounds of chaos grew louder, men's voices shouting orders. The heavy footsteps of people who didn't care about being heard. They ran. Pause for just 2 seconds. Comment where you're watching from, smash the like button, and subscribe because this story is about to get interesting. The hallway seemed endless. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every corner could hide danger. Jihoon's hand squeezed hers so tightly her fingers went numb, but she didn't let go. She would never let go. They turned into the east wing corridor. 20 more feet to the painting. 15. 10. Behind them, a door crashed open. There! The boy! She didn't look back. Didn't hesitate. She shoved Jihoon toward the painting, a massive portrait of some ancestor with stern eyes, and frantically searched for the release mechanism. Her fingers found a small indent in the frame's corner. She pressed. The painting swung outward, revealing a steel door with a keypad. 1 9 9 2. The door clicked open just as footsteps pounded toward them. She pushed Jihoon inside and spun around. 3 men in dark clothes, faces covered, moving fast. The first one reached for the boy. She stepped between them. Move, this doesn't concern you. He's a child. He's our objective. Now move before this gets worse. She didn't move. Behind her, she felt Jihoon's small hands clutching her shirt, felt his silent terror vibrating through his whole body. She'd made him a promise. She'd looked into his eyes and sworn she would protect him. The man lunged forward. She sidestepped, using momentum against him, and he stumbled past her into the wall. Basic defense training from a life she rarely spoke about. Muscle memory that hadn't faded even after years of disuse. The second man wasn't as easily fooled. He grabbed her arm, twisted hard. Pain shot through her shoulder, but she used it, rolled with the motion, broke his grip. Her elbow connected with his chest, and he grunted, stepping back. But the third man was already moving past her toward Jihoon. She threw herself backward, her body becoming a shield between the intruder and the child. Close the door. She signed frantically to Jihoon. Lock yourself in. Not without you. Do it now. The man grabbed her shoulders, trying to push her aside. She planted her feet, refusing to budge. Every second she held them here was another second for security to arrive, another second for Jihoon to seal himself safely away. You're making a mistake, the man hissed. No, you are. She went completely limp suddenly, dropping all her weight. The unexpected shift made him stumble. In that split second, she twisted free and shoved Jihoon hard through the safe room door. Lock it, she mouthed desperately. Their eyes met, his face was streaming with tears, his hands moved in frantic signs. I won't leave you. You promised to trust me. Trust me now. Lock the door. Time seemed to stop. The world narrowed to just his face, his terror, his love. Then, with a sob she couldn't hear but could feel in her soul, Jihoon pulled the door closed. The lock engaged with a heavy metallic sound. She turned back to face the 3 men, her body trembling but her resolve absolute. At least he was safe. Whatever happened now, at least he was safe. The first man had recovered. He approached with cold purpose. That was a mistake. Maybe. But he's locked in. You can't get to him now. No, but you just made this personal. He reached into his jacket. Her heart stopped. She knew what was coming. Knew there was no escape now. But Jihoon was safe. That was all that mattered. The weapon appeared. Small, dark, pointed directly at her. Time slowed to a crawl. She thought about Jihoon behind that door, probably watching through whatever security cameras the safe room contained. She thought about the promise she'd kept. She thought about the other child, the one she'd failed, and how different this ending was. She closed her eyes. The first impact hit her shoulder. The force spun her around and she crashed against the wall. Fire exploded through her body. Her legs buckled. The second impact hit her chest, just below her collarbone. Her body went numb. She couldn't feel her legs anymore. Couldn't feel anything except the cold spreading from her center outward. The third impact hit her side as she collapsed to the floor. Pain beyond description, beyond thought, beyond everything except the single awareness that she was falling and couldn't stop. The expensive carpet rushed up to meet her. She landed hard, her vision already blurring at the edges. Somewhere far away, she heard voices. Angry voices, frustrated voices. The door's locked down. We can't get through. Boss said it had to be tonight. Security's coming. We need to leave. Now. Footsteps, running, fading, then silence. She lay there, unable to move, staring at the sealed door that protected the child she'd promised to save. Her breathing came in short, painful gasps. Each breath was harder than the last. The cold was spreading faster now. Her fingers, her arms, her chest. But he was safe. That thought circled through her fading consciousness like a prayer. He was safe. She'd kept her promise. Finally, after all these years, after failing once before, she'd kept her promise to a child who needed her. The world started to fade. Sounds became distant. She heard shouting, more footsteps, but couldn't tell if they were friendly or hostile. Didn't matter anymore. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was the safe room door, solid and impenetrable, with a child behind it who would live to see tomorrow. Then nothing. Consciousness returned in fragments, pain first. Overwhelming, all-consuming pain that made her want to sink back into darkness. Then sound. Machines beeping frantically. Voices shouting orders that blurred together into meaningless noise. Pressure's dropping. We're losing her. I need 2 units immediately. Her lungs collapsed. We need to move faster. Hands on her body, moving her, pressing on her wounds. The pain intensified until she tried to scream, but no sound came out. Just a weak gasp that barely registered. Bright lights above, too bright, blinding. The ceiling tiles blurred past as they rushed her somewhere. She tried to focus, tried to remember why fighting mattered, but the pain kept pulling her back down into darkness. A face appeared in her fading memory. Small, serious, hands forming shapes she recognized. You're important to me. Fight. She had to fight, had to stay, had to know he was really safe. But her body was betraying her. The pain was fading now, replaced by a cold that started in her fingers and spread inward like ice through her veins. So cold, so tired. It would be so easy to just let go. She's crashing. Get the defibrillator. Clear. Electricity shot through her body. Her back arched off the table. Once. The cold receded slightly. Twice. Her heart stuttered, trying to remember its rhythm. 3 times. The steady beep of the monitor became a flatline scream. Again. We're not losing her. Again. More electricity, more pain breaking through the cold fog, and then somehow, impossibly, the beep returned. Weak, irregular, fighting. But there. I've got a pulse. It's weak, but it's there. Get her to surgery immediately. We might still have a chance. A chance. The word followed her down into medicated darkness. Just a chance. That was all anyone ever needed. Just a chance to keep breathing, to see tomorrow, to know that somewhere a small boy was safe and whole and not alone. Time lost all meaning in the darkness. Sometimes she surfaced briefly, aware of voices and movement and hands working on her body. Then darkness would pull her back down, over and over, a cycle of pain and unconsciousness that seemed to have no end. But somewhere in that darkness, she heard a voice. Young, desperate, broken. Please wake up, please, you promised. You promised you wouldn't leave. Ji-hoon. His voice cut through the fog like a lighthouse beam through storm clouds. He was there. He was safe, and he was begging her to come back. She tried to move, tried to open her eyes, tried to sign that she heard him, that she was fighting, that she wasn't giving up. But her body wouldn't respond, wouldn't obey. She was trapped in darkness, aware but unable to reach the light. The doctors say you're strong. They say you're fighting. Please keep fighting. Father's here too. He's learning to talk to me. Really talk to me. Like you do. But it won't mean anything if you're not here to see it. The words wrapped around her like a lifeline, pulled her toward consciousness, toward light, toward the world she'd almost left behind. More time passed. Impossible to measure. Could have been hours, could have been days. But slowly, gradually, the darkness began to recede. The pain returned, sharp and immediate, but pain meant alive. Pain meant fighting. Pain meant winning. Her eyes opened to slits. Everything was blurry. Too bright, but she could see shapes, movement. A small figure sitting in a chair beside her bed. Ji-hoon. His head was down, resting on the edge of her bed, his small hand wrapped around hers. Even in sleep, he held on, refused to let go. Just as she'd refused to let go of him in that hallway, she tried to move her fingers, just a small squeeze, the smallest indication that she was there, that she was aware that she'd come back. His head shot up immediately. His eyes went wide. Then tears started streaming down his face as his hands moved in rapid, frantic signs. You're awake. You're really awake. I was so scared. I watched everything on the camera. I saw them hurt you. I saw you fall and you weren't moving, and there was so much. His hands faltered. I thought you were gone. I thought I'd lost you. She tried to sign back, but her arms wouldn't cooperate. Too weak, too damaged. So she did the only thing she could. She blinked. Once for yes, twice for no. A code they'd established during one of their conversations. He understood immediately. Can you hear me? One blink. Does it hurt? One blink. Are you going to be okay? She paused. Then, with effort that cost everything, one slow blink. He collapsed against the bed, his body shaking with sobs. Relief, terror, joy, grief, all mixed together in the overwhelming emotion of a child who'd nearly lost someone precious. The door opened, heavy footsteps. She knew without seeing who it was. The master, Ji-hoon's father, the man whose son she'd saved. He appeared in her limited field of vision, and the transformation in his face shocked her more than the pain radiating through her body. This wasn't the cold, distant man she'd met days ago. This was someone broken open, vulnerable, human. You're awake. His voice was rough, raw, like he'd been screaming or crying or both. The doctor said it might take days, or that you might not. He stopped, composed himself. You've been unconscious for 18 hours. 3 significant injuries, 1 collapsed lung, severe trauma. You died twice on the operating table. If you're still watching, you're a real one. Comment where you're watching from, like this video, and subscribe to the channel for more intense stories like this. He pulled a chair closer to her bed and sat down heavily, as if his legs could no longer support him. The surgeon said, "You survived through sheer will. That medically, you shouldn't be here. But somehow, you fought your way back." Ji-hoon signed something to his father. The man's face softened as he watched his son's hands, clearly struggling to follow the rapid movements. "My son says you promised him you'd stay. He says you never break promises." The master's voice cracked. "He's been sitting in that chair since they brought you from surgery. The nurses tried to make him leave. I tried to make him leave. He refused. Said he needed to be here when you woke up. Said you'd be scared if you were alone." One tear rolled down her cheek. She couldn't stop it, couldn't wipe it away, could only let it fall as evidence of the emotion overwhelming her damaged body. The master leaned forward. "I need to tell you something about what happened, about who those men were." She blinked once, listening. "They were sent by a rival organization, someone who wanted to hurt me by taking my son. They'd been planning it for weeks, had someone inside my security team feeding them information, knew the layout of the house, knew the patrol schedules, knew exactly when to strike." His hands clenched into fists on his knees. "They knew everything, except one thing. They didn't know about you, didn't account for a maid who would refuse to move, who would sacrifice herself for a child she'd known for 2 days." Ji-hoon signed again. His father turned to him, and this time slowly, awkwardly, he signed back. The gestures were clumsy, uncertain, but genuine. Ji-hoon's face lit up like the sun breaking through clouds. The master turned back to her. "I've started learning. It's slow. I'm terrible at it. But my son deserves a father who can talk to him. Really talk to him. Not just speak words he can't hear." He paused. "You taught me that. In 48 hours, you showed me what I'd been too afraid to see for 7 years." A doctor entered, interrupting the moment. She was middle-aged, professional, with kind eyes that had clearly seen too much suffering. "I need to examine her, and she needs rest. The fact that she's conscious is remarkable, but her body has been through severe trauma. We're not out of danger yet." The master stood immediately. "Of course. How long until we know she'll fully recover?" The doctor's expression grew cautious. "It's too early to say. The next few days will be critical. The injuries were extensive. Her shoulder will require multiple surgeries. The damage to her chest means breathing will be difficult for some time, and there's always risk of infection or complications. But she'll live." Ji-hoon's father's voice held an edge of desperation. "If she continues fighting the way she has been, yes, I believe she will." Ji-hoon refused to leave, even when the doctor insisted. Finally, they compromised. He could stay, but he had to sit quietly in the corner while they worked. He agreed immediately, his eyes never leaving her face. The examination was painful. Every touch sent fire through her nerve endings. Every movement reminded her of exactly how damaged her body was. But she endured it silently, watching Ji-hoon watch her, drawing strength from his presence. When the doctor finally finished and left, the master returned with his sister. The elegant woman who'd warned her about getting too close to the boy. Now she looked at her with something like awe. "I told you people who get close to that boy either leave or disappear. You did neither. You redefined what's possible." She moved closer to the bed. "I've watched my brother build walls for years, watched him push away everyone who tried to care, watched my nephew grow up lonely and isolated. In 2 days, you broke through what 7 years couldn't touch." She glanced at her brother. Tell her what you've decided." The master looked uncomfortable, uncertain. Then he spoke, and his words changed everything. "When you recover, and you will recover, you won't return to work as staff. You'll be offered a permanent position as my son's companion and guardian, with appropriate compensation, your own quarters in the family wing, full authority over his daily care and education, legal protection under my name." She tried to process his words, tried to understand what he was offering. This wasn't employment. This was adoption into the family structure itself. This was power and protection and belonging in a world that had always kept her on the outside. She blinked once. Yes, acceptance. Ji-hoon jumped up from his corner and ran to her bedside, signing rapidly. "You'll stay? Really stay? Forever?" She couldn't sign back, so she blinked again. Once, firm, definite. He turned to his father with pure joy radiating from his face. His hands moved in signs his father clearly struggled to follow, but the meaning was obvious. "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." Over the next 3 days, consciousness came and went in waves. Sometimes she'd surface to find Ji-hoon reading beside her bed, sometimes his father, practicing signs from a book, sometimes nurses checking monitors and adjusting medications. And once, in the deep hours of night, she woke to find them both there, father and son, sitting together, the man's hand resting awkwardly on the boy's shoulder while Ji-hoon slept with his head on her bed. The moment felt sacred, fragile, like a new family being born from the ashes of violence and sacrifice. On the fourth day, the breathing tube was removed. The first words she spoke, rough and painful, were to Ji-hoon. "I'm here. I kept my promise." His tears soaked through her hospital gown as he clung to her, careful not to hurt her injuries, but desperate for connection. For proof that she was real and staying and wouldn't disappear like everyone else. "I saw everything," he signed when he finally pulled back. "On the security monitor. I saw them come at you. I saw you fight. I saw you fall and I couldn't do anything. I was safe and you were hurt and it was my fault." "No," her voice was barely a whisper, but firm. "Never your fault. My choice. I chose you. I would choose you 1,000 times. But you almost died. Almost. But I didn't. We're both here. Both safe. That's what matters." His father appeared in the doorway and she realized he'd been listening. "Can I come in?" She nodded. He entered slowly, as if entering sacred space. Then, with clear effort, he began to sign. The movements were slow and awkward, but the meaning was clear. "Thank you, for my son, for teaching me, for everything." Ji-hoon's mouth fell open. His hands flew in response. "Father, you did it. You said a whole sentence." The man's face cracked into a smile. A real smile, probably the first in years. "I've been practicing. I have a teacher, someone who knows sign language well. She's been giving me lessons every evening." "Who?" Ji-hoon asked. "One of the nurses here. She has a deaf brother. When I told her I wanted to learn to communicate with my son, she volunteered immediately." Over the next week, a pattern emerged. Mornings were for physical therapy, painful sessions where she relearned how to move her damaged body. Ji-hoon would sit nearby, encouraging her with signs. Afternoons were for rest, with Ji-hoon reading to her or telling her about his day. Evenings were for the three of them together, with the master practicing his signs and Ji-hoon glowing with happiness at his father's efforts. The house staff came to visit. Mrs. Choi, who'd been so cold before, arrived with tears streaming down her face. "I was wrong about you. So wrong. I thought you were just another person passing through. I didn't see what you really were." "What's that?" she asked. "A guardian angel. That's what everyone's calling you now. The woman who took 3 bullets for the young master, who fought trained men with her bare hands, who kept her promise even when it cost everything." The young man who'd warned her on her first night came too. "You should have left like I said, but I'm glad you didn't. I've never seen the young master smile so much, or the master actually look at his son like he loves him." But the most unexpected visitor came on the 10th day. A woman in an expensive suit, carrying a leather briefcase. She introduced herself as the family's lawyer. "I've been instructed to draw up papers, making you legal guardian of Ji-hoon, with equal custody rights to his father. It's unusual, but my client insists. He says his son needs you, and after what you did, he trusts you more than anyone else in the world." She looked at the master, who stood near the window. "You're serious about this?" "Completely. My son deserves 2 parents who love him. I'm trying to learn how to be one. You already are the other. I'm not his mother. No, but you're something just as important. You're the person who chose him, who protected him, who sees him as valuable and worthy and perfect exactly as he is." Ji-hoon signed from his chair. Will you be my other parent? Please?" How could she say no to that face, to those hopeful eyes, to the child who'd somehow walked into her life and healed wounds she'd carried for years? Yes, I will." The paperwork was filed within days, and 2 weeks after the night that changed everything, she was officially recognized as Ji-hoon's co-guardian. The ceremony was small, just the 3 of them, the lawyer and the master's sister, but it felt enormous, life-changing, like crossing a threshold into a completely different existence. As they left the lawyer's office, Ji-hoon grabbed both their hands, hers on one side, his father's on the other, and he signed with his free fingers, clumsy but determined. "We're a family now, a real family." His father signed back, still awkward but improving. "Yes, we are." She squeezed Ji-hoon's hand and added her own signs, and families protect each other, always. They walked together through the city streets, an unusual trio that drew curious glances. A powerful man beginning to soften, a woman bearing fresh scars from violence, and a deaf boy between them, connecting them, binding them into something stronger than blood alone could create. Before the story continues, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, Mom. I see every single one. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The first month after leaving the hospital was harder than anything she'd anticipated. Physical therapy sessions that left her gasping and trembling, nights when the pain medication wore off too soon and she lay awake counting minutes until the next dose. Mornings when her shoulder refused to cooperate, and simple tasks like brushing her hair became monumental challenges. But Jihoon was there through all of it. Learning to help her button shirts when her fingers wouldn't work, bringing her water before she had to ask, sitting quietly beside her when the pain was too much for conversation, just being present in the way only children who've known suffering can understand. And his father was changing too, slowly, awkwardly, but genuinely. He started joining them for breakfast, practicing his signs over coffee and toast. Started asking Jihoon about his day, really asking, really listening to the signed responses. Started being present in ways he clearly hadn't been for years. One evening, about 6 weeks after the attack, she found him in the library. He was sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. She almost left him alone, but something in his posture stopped her. "May I come in?" He looked up, startled, then nodded. She entered slowly, still moving carefully to protect her healing injuries, and sat in the chair across from him. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "I keep seeing it. That night, the security footage, I've watched it 17 times. His voice was hollow. "I watch you step between those men and my son. Watch you fight them. Watch you push him to safety. Watch you." He stopped, swallowed hard. "Watch you fall. Why do you keep watching?" "Because I need to remember. Need to burn it into my memory. What real love looks like, what sacrifice means, what I was too broken to give my own son." She let the silence sit between them for a moment, then spoke carefully. "You're not broken, you're hurt. There's a difference." "Is there?" "I pushed away the only person I had left, made my son feel like a burden, like his existence was something to hide and manage rather than celebrate." "But you're changing." Jihoon sees it. "I see it. That counts for something." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. "His mother died giving birth to him? Did my sister tell you that?" "Yes. What she didn't tell you is that it was my fault. We were being targeted even then. I knew it. Knew I was bringing a child into danger, but I was arrogant. Thought I could protect everyone. Thought my power was enough." His voice cracked. "She went into labor early, stress from the threats, complications I'd caused, and she died bringing my son into a world I'd made too dangerous for him. That's not. And then he was born deaf. The doctors said it was genetic, random chance, but I saw it as punishment, proof that everything I touched became broken. So I pulled away, hired people to care for him, built walls, told myself it was protection when really it was cowardice." She chose her next words carefully. "Jihoon doesn't need you to be perfect. He needs you to be present, to try. You're doing that now. That's what matters. Because you showed me how. A stranger who walked into my house and immediately saw what I'd been blind to for 7 years. My son wasn't the broken one. I was. You're both healing now. That's what I see." He looked at her then, really looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Why did you do it? Really? You'd known him 2 days. You owed us nothing. You could have moved aside, let them take him, walked away alive." She'd known this question was coming eventually. Had been preparing her answer since she woke up in the hospital. But now, sitting in the dark library with this man who just bared his soul, the rehearsed words disappeared. "I had a son once." The words came out barely above a whisper. "Not legally, but in every way that mattered. My sister's boy. She died when he was 3. Cancer. Fast and brutal. And I became his guardian." The master went very still, listening. He was deaf too, born that way, and beautiful and funny and so full of life. I learned sign language for him, built my world around him, loved him with everything I had. She paused, gathering strength. "When he was 5, I made a mistake. Just one. Left him with a neighbor for an hour while I worked. The neighbor didn't know sign language, didn't understand his needs, and he had an allergic reaction to something he ate. Couldn't tell anyone what was wrong. By the time I got there, by the time they got him to the hospital, it was too late." Tears ran down her face now. She didn't try to stop them. "He died because I wasn't there, because I chose work over vigilance, because I failed to protect him when he needed me most." That wasn't your fault. Maybe not, but it felt like it. Still feels like it. And I promised myself that if I ever had another chance to protect a child who needed someone to see them, to really see them, I wouldn't fail again. She met his eyes. Jihoon needed someone, and I'd rather die than fail another child who needed me. The silence that followed was profound. Then the master stood, crossed to her chair, and did something completely unexpected. He knelt beside it, took her hand gently, and spoke in a voice thick with emotion. I'm sorry for your loss, for your pain, and I'm grateful beyond words that your tragedy brought you to my son. To us, you turned your grief into protection, your failure into purpose. That's not weakness, that's the strongest thing I've ever witnessed. She squeezed his hand, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. We're both broken people, he continued, both carrying guilt and grief. But maybe that's why we can help each other heal. Help Jihoon grow up knowing he's loved and valued and safe. Maybe, she whispered. Maybe that's exactly why. They sat together in the dark library for a long time after that, not speaking, just being present. Two wounded people finding unexpected companionship in shared pain and shared purpose. The next morning, everything felt different, lighter somehow. As if speaking their truths out loud had released some pressure that had been building for years. Jihoon noticed immediately at breakfast. He looked between them with sharp, observant eyes, then signed. Something changed. You both look different. His father signed back, still slowly but with growing confidence. We talked about hard things, about the past. Good hard or bad hard. Good hard, the kind that helps you heal. Jihoon considered this, then signed to her. Did you tell him about your son, the one you lost? She blinked in surprise. How did you know about that? You talk in your sleep sometimes. When you were really sick in the hospital, you said his name, called for him. His small face was serious. I didn't mean to hear, but I did, and I understood. What did you understand? That you loved someone like me before, that you lost him, that it hurt you so much you thought you'd never be happy again. He paused. But then you found me, and maybe I found you, and maybe we both get a second chance. The simple wisdom of it broke something open in her chest. This child, who'd lived with loneliness and isolation, understood loss in ways most adults never would. Understood that love could hurt and heal in equal measure. Yes, she signed, a second chance for both of us. His father watched them with wonder in his eyes. My son is wiser than I ever gave him credit for. He's had to be, she replied. Children who grow up different learn to see things others miss. Over the following weeks, their unconventional family found its rhythm. Mornings were for lessons, with her teaching Jihoon literature and history while his father worked. Afternoons were for physical therapy and recovery. Evenings were sacred time when all three of them gathered, practicing signs, sharing meals, building connections that had never existed before. The house staff adjusted to the new reality. Mrs. Choi became an unexpected ally, running interference when business associates came calling during family time. The young man who'd warned her that first night started teaching Jihoon chess. Even the security team, upgraded and thoroughly vetted after the breach, treated her with respect bordering on reverence. You're the woman who took 3 bullets for the young master. One guard explained when she questioned their deference. That earns respect in any world. But the most meaningful change was watching the relationship between father and son transform. 3 months after the attack, she walked past Jihoon's room and found them sitting together on the floor, the master's large hands forming signs while Jihoon giggled at his father's mistakes. No, father, that sign means elephant. You just told me you wanted to eat an elephant for dinner. The master laughed, actually laughed, and tried again. How about now? Better. You said pasta, much more reasonable. She backed away quietly, not wanting to interrupt. This was their moment, their connection, and it was beautiful. That night, after Jihoon was asleep, the master found her in the conservatory. She'd taken to sitting there in the evenings, surrounded by plants and moonlight, processing the surreal turn her life had taken. He's happy, the master said without preamble. For the first time since his mother died, my son is genuinely happy. So are you. I can see it in your face. Yes, which terrifies me. He sat beside her on the bench. I've spent years making sure I couldn't lose anything else. No attachments, no vulnerabilities, no love that could be weaponized against me. And then you walked in and destroyed all those walls in 2 days. Are you angry about that? No, I'm grateful and terrified Because now I have everything to lose again. My son's happiness, your presence, this fragile family we're building. My enemies will see it, will try to use it. She turned to face him fully. Then we protect it. Together. Not by hiding or building walls, but by being strong enough to defend what matters. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's terrifying, but it's also the only way to really live. She touched his arm gently. You can't protect Jehoon from the world by keeping him isolated. You can only teach him to be strong enough to face it. And you can't do that if you're not willing to face it yourself. He covered her hand with his. When did you become so wise? When I lost everything and had to learn how to live anyway. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching moonlight filter through the glass ceiling, and she realized something profound. She'd come to this house looking for employment, for survival, for a way to keep moving forward after tragedy had hollowed her out. Instead, she'd found purpose, family, a second chance at the love she thought she'd lost forever. Thank you, the master said quietly, for saving my son, for saving me, for showing us both what family actually means. Thank you for letting me stay, for giving me a place to belong. You'll always belong here. This is your home now. For as long as you want it. Forever then, he smiled. Forever it is. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss stories like this. Smash the like button and drop a comment telling us which moment hit you hardest. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. We'll see you in the next video with another powerful story. Until then, remember, love is worth fighting for. See you soon.